This is a clip from the Red Cow Arcade podcast.
On the video game topic, it's Halloween time, and so I've been in the I like to put a mood down here on the emulated arcade cabinet, and so I've been kind of like diving into the Castlevania games a bit more. I think I've mentioned this in the past. I didn't grow up with the Castlevania games, and I always knew that they were spooky, and so that was appealing. But I don't know. I never played them. Last year, I played through all of the first one for the first time. I've played through 4. I like them. I think they're good. I think they're too hard, personally. But I'm sure if I had grown up with them, I would have memorized all the patterns, and I wouldn't feel like that. It'd be a Batman NES situation for me by now. But I'm not there, and so it's a little bit of a slog. But I think it's Konami. They play great. There's a lot of good reasons to play them. I never played through Symphony of the Night. I started to. And I like it, but I don't really like the explorer part of it. I don't really like the let's go through a massive map of a castle thing. I like it in concept though. But I never played Dracula X for the SNES. And then I found out, I don't know how I didn't know this, that there was a PC Engine CD release of that. That's the original version of that game. It was called Rondo of Blood. And I guess most people know it, the original release of it, from the PSP. They released it on the PSP some time later. But I can play the original game on the from that original port. And it's good. I don't think it's Castlevania 4 good, but the soundtrack is amazing because it's the CD based console, and it controls nicely, and the graphics are super cool, and it's just fun. And it provides nice atmosphere here. It's got anime cutscenes, like the full motion video you would expect from such a system. And the whole thing made me realize, like, I think that it's such a narrow era of gaming consoles. The CD based gaming console that wasn't a 3D console. It wasn't Sega Saturn, wasn't PS1. So that Sega CD, PC Engine CD, TurboGrafx CD. I'm probably missing others. Neo Geo CD. There's just that little era there that I think there's some special games in the mix, because they're basically 16-bit games that are souped up with awesome soundtracks and the occasional really nice sprite scaling. I think it's like there's unexplored games there. I want to keep playing more of these CD based consoles.
No, I agree completely. I love souped up like 2D games.
Yeah.
And with great sound, like the Rondo of Blood soundtrack is just great.
Yeah.
And I played it for the first time because they released it on the Wii Virtual Console, and that was a really big deal because it was never released in the West. So I played it in college on the Wii Virtual Console when it was released.
It's very Halloween.
And yeah, I think it's one of the better Castlevanias for sure. My favorite Castlevania is Castlevania 3. And,
more than 4.
It's very hard. Yeah, definitely more than 4. I love the multiple characters because you could play as Alucard or Sypha and Trevor Belmont and Grant Dynasty, which is a great name, Grant Dynasty.
Yeah. Remember Shasta McNasty?
No.
It was this like UPN sitcom starring that guy who was Mini-Me from the Austin Powers movie.
Oh, Vern Troyer, yeah.
Yeah, and Shasta McNasty. I've never seen it, but they advertise for it during wrestling a lot. Anyway.
Oh, so anyway, I love Castlevania 3, and which made me want to catch up with the Castlevania TV series.
Yeah, the Netflix one, yeah.
Yeah, and so I've watched through the whole Netflix Castlevania series, and I just recently watched the last season. It's a great series. Like, I think it's good. Like, as far as video game adaptations, it's the best one. But that's not saying much, because most video game adaptations of movies or TV they're garbage. But I think it's worth watching. It's kind of a mixed bag sometimes because the writing can be very sophisticated, but also sometimes it can be like a 13-year-old is writing it. It's very inconsistent. Like some characters will like use the F-bomb, and you wouldn't expect that character to use the F-bomb, and you're just like, are you just being like weird and edgy? I don't like, especially because I think they were kind of riffing off of Game of Thrones. You know how Game of Thrones is like uses F-bombs a lot and lewd situations, and I think they were kind of riffing off that at the beginning. And
is it like an anime, or I gotta admit I've not seen a frame of it.
It's American, but they definitely are inspired by anime.
I imagine it's Netflix. I imagine they paid a lot for the animations. Nice animation.
Yeah, the animation's nice. The first season is only 4 episodes, so if anything, just watch the first season. It's 4 episodes. The animation's gorgeous. It doesn't waste your time. The second season, it starts to introduce like these intrigue, like I said, kind of inspired by Game of Thrones. These intrigue plot lines, and the episode count balloons to like 12 or something, or 10 or 12. And so it starts to, you feel that bloat a little bit, but the animation's really great. And the ending of season 2 it rips. It's so good.
Oh, wow. Well, that's high praise.
Yeah, especially because it follows the Castlevania 3 storyline with Trevor, Sypha, and Alucard, and they make a great trio, and they battle Dracula. It's so good. The third season is probably the worst one. It feels like it's treading water, and then the fourth season, it's a good ending in there, but I feel like it's also inconsistent. But so overall, I think it's worthwhile, but the third season's not great. And the fourth season at least ends well, but there's some inconsistent parts. But the first and second season, I think you can watch those, and they're perfect.
You know what's funny about Netflix, and probably the same can be said of HBO, but I think even more so Netflix, is they, all of a platform like Netflix, the thing that their mission, I imagine, is like, when you come here, everything you watch will be good. Something like that. And they probably, they've gone through eras of their platform where like they were more like, they had a lot of shovelware, for lack of a better term. And I'm guessing they want, especially for when they're focused on original programming, they just want everything to be good. So they're always willing to invest to stay competitive. So like, it seems like, like if they had like a mission statement, it'd be like, we can't always promise the show will be good, but we can promise it will be well made.
Yeah.
We'll always like, I didn't see that Dark Crystal series, for instance, and I don't know if it's for me. That's probably why I haven't watched it, but I, as far as I can tell, it's super well made. So whether or not a Dark Crystal series makes any sense, money was spent and somebody took it seriously. Again, I think probably the same can be said of a lot of HBO content.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate with Castlevania. It was a lot of money was spent on it. It has a great presentation. A lot of it works, some of it doesn't.
Well, writing is one of those things you can't spend enough money to make sure that a show makes narrative or emotional sense. Like that's just, I mean, you can hire people that have done it successfully before, but sometimes Peter Jackson turns around and makes the Hobbit trilogy. So you just never fucking know.
The best parts of the Castlevania series are when Trevor Belmont, Sypha, and Alucard are interacting with each other. And the worst parts of the series are when they like separate them needlessly. Like the whole third season, they're separated, and that's the worst because their dynamic is so good and they play off each other so well. What I will praise them for is there's a romantic relationship between Trevor Belmont and Sypha, which is canon in the video games. And I think they pulled that off really well. Like there's so many times when romantic things happen in TV shows, and then after they get together, you're just like, ooh, what do you do now? But but they actually do it really well. Like they become like a really good functional couple. And
That's a super good point. I especially things like romance dramas or teen dramas and that kind of thing. It seems like the thing that the writer always struggles with is the audience wants two people to get together. That's like a lot of the reason they're watching. So therefore, the writer can't just make it happen. It has to be all about like they can't get together. And then when they do, and then the show has a new status quo where they're together, it's like, well, then we have to tear them apart again so that we can have the story again. That's a good point. Like, solidifying romance and narratives is a difficult thing.
It's almost impossible. So this is something I was really impressed with, where they got together and then they just like were a really strong couple that helped each other out, and it was like natural, and like that's super hard.
But so if from that point on you're just psyched whenever they're together, then that's a good reason to watch. Well, that's cool. I love it's 2D animated. You said it's like that.
Yeah, it's hand drawn animation.
Maybe I'll take a look.
Yeah, it's not all of it's a winner, but I think it's overall worth it.
I mean, even just those first 4 sound like they're. If they had only released those 4, it would have been worth doing.
Yeah, it would have been like, people would be like, oh, that's the best video game adaptation that's ever been.
Wow,
I would say, yeah.
Especially for such like kind of a thin. Well, I guess the concept got more complicated over time, but it felt like a thin concept to me, which is like vampire hunter goes and beats up the Grim Reaper or some shit.
Pretty much.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.